Sir Arthur Conan Doyle by Lindsey Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was born Arthur Ignatius Conan Doyle in Edinburgh, Scotland, to Charles and Mary Doyle. Mary was an elaborate storyteller where Arthur attributes getting his innate writing ability from and where he thinks his storytelling skills originated. Charles, on the other hand, was an artist, an aspiring artist at that. He doesn't have any notable works and was a lifelong alcoholic, which severely hindered him getting his work out. This could be where Arthur got his creative ability from. They were both heavy influencers on his development of talents. When he was 9, he was sent to a boarding school called Hodder Place, Stonyhurst, that was in England. He spent 2 years there, and he remembers these 2 years as being filled with bullying, and it was a very harsh place for a young boy to be. And then he went on to continue at Stonyhurst College for the following 5 years. After he obtained his degree from Stonyhurst College, he went on to the University of Edinburgh to attain a medical degree. He was wanting to become a doctor, and it was very strange for his family, especially since they were full of artists and creative people, for someone to want to be a doctor. He met Dr. Joseph Bell, who was the inspiration behind Sherlock Holmes. Doyle here also found spiritualism and denounced his Catholic faith through his research in science. Dr. Joseph Bell was a peculiar fellow. He was able to look at a patient and know exactly why they were in there and what they did for a living. And so Doyle took this and placed it in his Holmes character, but just in a different setting that was more favorable for readers. Doyle married Louisa Hawkins in 1885, and they had a boy and girl. However, Louisa began getting sick with tuberculosis in 1893, and this was ultimately her demise in 1906. During this time she was ill, though, Doyle met Jean Leckie, and he ended up marrying right after she passed. They supposedly had a little fling in between as Louisa was ailing, so they had 2 sons and a daughter. So altogether, Doyle has 3 sons and 2 daughters. So between 1890 and 1900 was when Doyle started his Sherlock Holmes book series. They extended throughout. The 4 most popular were published during this period. He also wrote about spiritualism during this time and tried to kill off Sherlock in 1893, but ultimately brought Sherlock back because of readers' revolt and wanting for him. So Doyle originally did that to focus on his spiritualism writings, but ultimately went back to writing Sherlock. Doyle published the final collection of Sherlock Holmes, which was a series of 12 short stories, and the Casebook of Sherlock Holmes in 1928. And ultimately, Doyle passed away in the garden of Crowborough, England, holding a rose in one hand and the other clutching his chest. He was actually bedridden and had snuck out that night to go to the garden. And then when they found him, he passed out in the garden, and when they found him, they brought him back to his room, where his last words to his wife were, "You are wonderful." The case of the speckled band. So Sherlock still to this day is a relative character and is very used widely by the media. So Sherlock, the idea itself, has been portrayed in Sherlock, the TV show produced by BBC, since 2010. And Elementary, a case where they're Sherlock and Watson, but they're modern-day detectives, and Watson is actually a medical doctor, has been airing since 2012 on ABC. House MD, however, is not your typical Sherlock. He is a doctor, which goes back to Joseph Bell, and he does study the patients in the same way Sherlock would in his own cases. That aired from 2004 to 2012 on Fox. And then Psych is the comedy version of this. It was aired from 2006 to 2014, and it was about a guy who would use his ability to read people and read the situation to convince everyone he was psychic. So it was a comedic twist on the original Sherlock idea, but it was the same relative concept behind it. These are my works cited, and thank you for listening.